everybody, and welcome to the January 8th, 2020 School Committee meeting. We are all in attendance, with the exception of Mr. Bior. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So first we'll have some items for approval. Approval of minutes December 18th, 2019. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mr. Fennelly, seconded by Mrs. Burns. All in favor? It's unanimous. We have approval of a CASIT grant. Sorry, I'm just going to pull this up. To Carlos Luis Brown, Wilmington High School World Languages Curriculum Team Leader, in the amount of $3,500. And I'm just going to quickly read the memo. CASIT awarded $3,300 to Wilmington High School World Languages Curriculum Team Leader, Mr. Carlos Luis Brown, to be used toward the purchase of instructional material texts per school committee policy. Donations in excess of $500 must be accepted by the committee. I'm just question here, is it 33 or 35? 35, okay. So I'm just make that change. Is there a motion to accept the grant? Mrs. Burns, seconded by Mr. Ragsdale. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Next, we have approval of Wilmington Educational Foundation miscellaneous grant to Mr. Neil Roberts, also at Wilmington High School, Visual Arts District Liaison for the annual Wilmington Public Schools Art Fair, in the amount of $1,500. Thank you, Wilmington Educational Foundation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Samaha, thank you. Seconded by Mrs. Newhouse. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, WEF. Moving right along, we have the second reading approval of school committee policies BDE through BK. Well, that actually looks like BEC through BK. I'm going to skip over BEC and BGE. There were some questions, so I'm going to take the next batch, BGF, suspension of policies, through BK. Is there a motion to approve the second reading of those policies? Mrs. Burns, thank you. Seconded by Mr. Fennelly. All in favor? That is unanimous. And now we have some warrants. I'll take these in order. We have G411, R212, R213, L40, L41, and FS13. Is there a motion to approve? Mrs. Burns, seconded by Mr. Samaha. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And then we have payroll ending 1/2/2020. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Fennelly, seconded by Mr. Ragsdale. All in favor? That is unanimous. Next up, we have our favorite part of the evening, our student representatives. Tonight, we have our middle school representatives, Carly Thayer and Abigail Driscoll. Please join us up front. Tell us what's happening at the middle school. Hi.
At the middle school, students will be taking the YRBS, otherwise known as the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. This survey is done every 2 years, covering health habits and behaviors. This survey helps staff promote healthy choices among students.
In the first week of February, 7th graders will be completing the SBIRT and hearing and vision tests to promote awareness about mental health and substance abuse. The hearing and vision tests can help indicate students that need support in these areas.
On Friday, January 17th, 8th graders will have an assembly featuring a climate change scientist. We're excited to learn about this important topic.
Today was the first day of Ski Club. Students ski at Neshoba Valley Ski Area. They can take lessons or just ski for fun with their friends.
On Thursday, January 16th, will be the 6th and 7th grade chorus and Wilmington's concert. Miss Prindeville will be running the concert at the high school starting at 7 p.m.
The SAD Club, or Students Against Destructive Decisions, meets once a month to discuss issues that teens face. We show our support by having signs up around the school for social media safety.
The 6th grade band concert that was rescheduled in December will be tomorrow. The concert is at Wilmington High School and starts at 7 p.m.
Congratulations to the WMS FTC Robotics Club. They won the top middle school at the Battle of Lexington competition. The club earned 8th place and are excited for the next competition on January 18th.
Excellent, and I'm so sorry, Lindsay. I called you Carly, I'm so sorry. It was
It's okay.
not printed correctly here, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, this is not Carly Thayer, this is Lindsay Anthony, so I apologize. But I was right on Abby Driscoll. So, and thank you to your teacher and your principal, Dr. Quirk. Thank you for being here as well. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have our superintendent's report, Dr. Brand.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. There are 3 items just to briefly bring to your attention in the packet. First off, the item A, FY20 Safe and Supportive Schools Competitive Fund 335 grant. You'll see 2 items that are part of this attachment. The first is the congratulations letter that is extended to us from the Office of the Governor regarding Safe and Supportive Schools Competitive Fund. And this, I think that's an important piece to note. That is in the amount of $6,500. The complementary piece you can see behind this is a memo from Dr. Quirk and Ms. Murray that provides an overview of the intention around the expenditure of these funds. And as you'll note, although we applied for and we're hoping to receive a little bit more than that amount, nevertheless, we'll certainly utilize those funds well. And just for members of the committee and community, I think it's important to note that these funds will specifically go towards supporting social and emotional well-being aspects at the middle school. Specifically, the purchase and acquisition of the Choose to Be Nice curriculum, as well as to help support the PBIS, or Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports program at the middle school level. You can see a little bit more about the target 6th and 7th grade for the Choose to Be Nice curriculum. And this is part of a longer-term rollout, but we're very fortunate and excited to have the funds to be able to work with and put them to good use. So that's for informational. The second item is regarding our transportation coordinator, and with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Ruggiero.
Thank you. On January 2nd, Lisa Ferretra joined us as the transportation coordinator. She comes to us from North Reading Transportation, where she held the positions of safety and training manager and terminal manager. She brings a wealth of knowledge and information related to school transportation, both in district and out of district, with an extensive background in safety management and routing. So we're very pleased to have her join us. She'll be part of our school start times committee in the work that we're doing there. So please welcome Lisa, a great addition to the Wilmington Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggiero, and yes, indeed, she's a great asset. I had the pleasure to meet with her earlier this week and talk extensively about a number of items, including the start time work. Finally, review of school and district websites. The third item, you'll see a brief memo to the committee, but equally wanted to let the community as a whole know. It's no surprise to, I don't think, many of us who have had the opportunity to peruse our either district and or school websites that they are long overdue, in need of a reboot, an overhaul, whatever words you may wish to use. And so it's been with some degree of conversation with Mr. Lord, that who's also very much in agreement, by the way, of this. We're talking about trying to boost and enhance our communication efforts. I think we'd all agree that the platform that we're using, how accessible it is, and of course the content that's there is an important piece of this. And so I'm pleased to be able to say that we are going to move forward with a specific eye towards a redesign of our websites that would likely happen in the summer of 2020. But in order to prepare for that, we are going to try and be very thoughtful in terms of gathering information from our stakeholders, staff, parents, guardians, and our students, in terms of what are people ideally looking for that's maybe not there right now, or what's working well, or what might not be working well in terms of our current websites. We're going to use, I'm pleased to be able to say, the members of the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, as well as members of the Interschool Council, to help facilitate this outreach and really try and acquire information that we'll then build upon over the course of the spring to prepare for the transition in the summer. So I wanted to let you and the community know that we're on the path towards this work. I know that this is overdue. I'm sure you can understand, we just didn't have the capacity without Mr. Lord, but we have him now, and we look forward to making some changes that will help improve. So stay tuned for that survey, as well as a reboot of our websites. And with that, that's it for the report this evening.
Mrs. Bernstein?
I have two fairly easy questions. With regards to the summer work, once these surveys are done and we have a direction, is there any budgetary impacts that we have accounted for in our, going forth in our fiscal year budget? Because the other aspect is, which is kind of a caveat to my second question, is will the district emails, will that be changing as they redirect the website and knowing like licensure and all that stuff? I was wondering if we planned for it in the proposed budget that we'll be talking about in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Great question. So I'm pleased to be able to say that, again, through some conversations that Mr. Ruggiero and I have had with Ken, he absolutely believes that there are other options out there that we could perhaps pursue for a vendor, or a newfound relationship, I guess, a business relationship with our current vendor that will actually decrease the costs. The reality is, we may have to absorb a little bit of a uptick in the first year to help support this work. But in fact, over the longer term, year 2 or year 3, we can, in short, we can do better, we think, Mr. Lord thinks, from a financial standpoint with our vendor or provider right now. As it relates to the second or the other part of the email, that's a separate aspect of this work, and that's not, to my understanding, at all incorporated into any of this. There's not an intention to change that. The only exception somewhat related to communications is our outbound system, Blackboard Connect. Perhaps that's our call system and such. That could become a part of this, but it would not be a noticeable change on the, yeah. So,
Okay, thank you.
thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, so next on the agenda, we have public comment. Is there anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. There is no old business, so we're right into new business. We have a fall athletics update. Who am I passing that to?
I will
Okay.
take that, sure. I do wish to apologize that Mr. Harrison's not able to be with us here this evening, but nevertheless, I'll draw your attention to the athletics update report that he did provide and that is included in the packet, entitled Fall 2019 Athletics Update. Consistent with what we've, here in, at least in Wilmington, tend to do, provide the committee and the community with a bit of an update. And this is, obviously, we're in the winter season now, but this is going back a little bit in time with the conclusion of the fall season. And just some of the highlights spanning the multitude of sport offerings that Wilmington provides. You can see the information in here in terms of the overall finish, some of the all-star notable mentions, and the records as a whole, as well as a shout-out certainly to the coaches involved. On that note, we'll extend our thanks to the many coaches. We have so many sport offerings here in the district, as I hope you know. And it couldn't be possible without, obviously, the efforts and support of our coaches, as well as our parent guardians. And so thank you to them, and of course, thank you to our students. The extensive participation that we have here really is phenomenal, and it's a great thing to be able to provide. So I'm happy to take any questions, should you have any, and certainly if you have some that I can't answer, I'll get in touch with Mr. Harrison. I will also just say briefly, though, that related to athletics, and forgive me for not mentioning this earlier, but our athletics director search, as you know, is underway. And in fact, I had the pleasure to meet with that screening committee this evening as they formally start their work. So,
Thank you. Next, 8B, we have middle school programs update. Sherry Parker,
Ms. Parker.
will you join us?
Well, Ms. Parker's coming forward. I'll just take this opportunity, and I know the committee is aware of this, but for our community as a whole, Ms. Parker as you know, does some fantastic work helping really oversee and lead the CARES program for this district. And boy, what a much-used and much-beloved program that is. And kudos to her and her leadership for that very fact. It clearly is meeting a great need. Last year, my first year, some of the conversations very quickly out of the gate with Ms. Parker were really centered around how that program could be even expanded further. And the target audience was that of the middle school. And boy, was that a great set of thoughts collectively and to think about, because it is an area that I think could be expanded and should be expanded. Perhaps not in the same way that maybe some of the community or many of the community think about the CARES program, offering before and after school care, child care that is, but certainly the opportunity of providing programming for students to extend their day in a different way. And that's exactly what Ms. Parker has done here, and she's here to provide you with an update on that this evening.
Thank you. Yes, we created something that we call the ACE program, after-school clubs and enrichment. And what we decided to do was to offer some offerings for all students at the middle school, grades 6 through 8, because currently CARES does only go up through 6th grade, and truthfully, we just have a handful of 6th graders that participate. So it's really not meeting the needs of the students. So we looked about offering some different clubs and opportunities that were more outside the box, more of enrichment for students, and we've enlisted the help of the middle school teachers and staff to come up with offerings. So we're piloting it this year. We've already completed a fall session. We have literally just started yesterday our winter session, and then we do plan a spring session. So what is happening is on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1:45 to 3:15, there are offerings for students, and they can change season to season. In the fall, we had 3 offerings. One was the Minecraft Collaborative, which filled up in a heartbeat, as you can imagine. I know, shocked with that one. We had a Pause for Applause improv group, and we had a yoga and mindfulness group. The students do pay a small fee of $60. It's a 9 to 10-week session, depending on how the calendar falls. And the teachers receive a stipend through the CARES funding that we collect through the tuition. And we have also provided a bus option for students that participate in these clubs. So we have 2 late buses that leave at 3:15 after the clubs are done, and the families in advance let us know what bus stops they're going to be using. This session, we have Minecraft Collaborative 1 and 2, because we now had to do 2 sessions because it's so popular. We have a ukulele club that is being run by Jennifer Perkins, who's one of the music teachers here. We have So You Think You Can Sew. It's a quilting and sewing club that also filled up immediately. And a 4th offering is called the 40% Club. It is about community service projects, and really life is what 40% of what you make in your life is what you do with it, what your choices. So it's trying to hone in the students to think of what they can do with that 40% that they're responsible for, and how we can give back to the community. So that has just started as well. And who knows what will happen in the spring. Some of the teachers were not available, like the yoga teacher was not available for the winter, but is anticipating to come back in the spring. So it's just really a wonderful opportunity for our students to have something different to do, for the teachers to have an opportunity to form bonds and relationships with the students outside the classroom that really kind of is a little bit more of maybe a personal connection. Oh, I didn't know, you were into yoga, Mr. So-and-so, right? And obviously they make a little money doing it too. So it's been a pretty smooth transition, I think. And we're just hoping it will grow more and more each year as the students and the staff, get more involved. So yeah, pretty exciting.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Are there questions or comments?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just curious, about approximately how many students participated in the fall?
The fall, we had about 30 kids,
Okay,
and we have 40, or 39 or 40 for this term. So, some of the clubs are, obviously with Minecraft, we only have 12 licenses, so we can't go more than that. We only have 12 sewing machines.
That's the magic number 12.
Apparently.
Mr. Ragsdale?
I'm curious what the, relationship, coordination is between like these types of programs and the more traditional after-school clubs that are offered just by the middle school, whether it's, robotics or the after-school sports club and so forth. How are these kind of seen to complement each other, or what's appropriate for one versus the other?
Right, well, I believe that there are certain clubs that are in the teacher's contract that are funded through the school budget, et cetera, and those are totally staying in place. We are not trying to do anything at all to compete or, pilfer any of their offerings. It's really an opportunity to, using the CARES funding that we generate with the tuition, to offer things a little bit outside the box. So we're hopefully complementing those programs, but it doesn't impact anything that's currently being offered. Did that answer your question well enough? Okay. Any other? No? If it's okay, one other quick thing I did want to mention to the school board was another project with CARES we are switching to an online system for all of our registrations called Community Pass. We are unrolling that one at a time. So our February vacation program went online. Parents can register online, pay online, and our registration for February just closed. We are up even more numbers again. Parents seem to love it, and so it will be slowly rolling with each program. And hopefully by this summer, all of CARES, all their programs, ACE, Box, summer, vacation, everything will now be able to go online, and parents can pay that way as well, which is, they're earning their credit card points, so they're pretty excited about it. So I just wanted to let you all be aware of that change as well.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for all you do. We really do appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
Thanks for being here.
Sure.
All right, personnel report.
Sure. I will take that. I think it is the case that Ms. Stern Armstrong is still probably caught up in the athletic search, because that's where I saw her about 2 hours ago. So in your packet, item 8C is a brief personnel report as of the beginning of this month. I'll draw your attention to specifically, there are some open positions. I think that I've touched upon this before briefly, but we have, unfortunately, throughout the course, it seems this year in particular, at least in comparison to last year, we've had a fair degree of turnover, and that is concerning. I can tell you certainly that, and I see the forms come through, as does Mr. Ruggiero, as quickly as it is that we learn about an opening, HR moves forward aggressively to try and fill those. It's just been an unfortunate set of challenges. I might wonder if there was a theme here, and I truly don't at all believe that that's the case. There are just simply different circumstances. As an example, you can see some of this noted here. A teaching opportunity that came up at last minute, and as you might imagine, many of our educational assistants are interested in pursuing something in education, and so but there's other reasons, and each and every case, I think, is different. I will, though, take the opportunity, we're talking about personnel, to say that one of the things that I do believe that we should do, that it's my understanding that we have not in recent times, and that is actually really engage in exit interviews with all of our staff. It's something that I do think is important. I think it could provide an opportunity. I do suspect that at the end of the day, each and every case will be unique and different. However, if there are circumstances or factors that might be collected as more of a theme, then we should know about those. So we are going to move in that direction, and I'll be speaking with the leadership team about that actually later this week. But so this is an overview. This is part and parcel, as members of the committee know, that is routinely brought before you as an update. And with all of that, if there are any specific questions, I'll certainly, or Mr. Ruggiero can answer those.
Mrs. Burns?
I appreciate you pointing out the fact that the educational assistant role in the transitions that we've been seeing, and this is nothing new in this juncture, we've been seeing in my purview, an increasing trend in it, and I think an exit interview would be ideal. Because I think my overall concern, though, too, is in the realm of student support and special education services.
Sure.
We find the highest turnover, and research has shown over, decades that it is one of the, carries the biggest burnout factor. So I think that is also something that could be captured within those exit interviews, because as we've discussed at previous meetings too, that I think the well-being, both mental and physical, of our staff is just as important. And I would like to see, as we, you're still acclimating and, digging in to our district, but I would like to see if there are ways or initiatives that we can offer our staff, whether it be after school for team building or just for mental health, to just so that they themselves can recharge and
Right.
be the best they can at home and in the school. I really do think that as we look towards how do we support our students, I think the best way to support our students is supporting our staff in those certain, in that certain realm as well, to make sure that they too are in the best.
I agree, and I appreciate you sharing that. Whether it's an educational assistant or a teacher or an administrator, I do believe that, there has to be attention given to thinking about both how do we best attract and then retain, right? Staffing, and, for what it's worth, and I don't have hard and fast statistics to be able to prove this, but it sounds clearly from different, both colleagues I've talked to as well as, and I'm thinking specifically of Ms. Brown-Legrand, who's had these kind of conversations with her colleagues. It does not sound like, unfortunately, we're very unique, Wilmington, in terms of grappling with this. And when there are openings, especially for the more, difficult positions, some of the more difficult positions, it sounds like many districts, not too far afield, are struggling, unfortunately, with the same thing. So that's one piece. The second piece, though, just to briefly share with you on the note of personnel, is thinking about that attracting piece. And I'm pleased to be able to say, and thank you to Ms. Stern Armstrong for her leadership, we are heading out for, I think it was 3 or maybe 4 job fairs over the course of the next number of months. My understanding is that's not necessarily something that we have routinely or typically done at all. I think it's a great move, and we're going to be sending small teams of representatives from the leadership team out to those job fairs, with the first one being the first part of February or middle of February, I think. So again, there's work. I think that we have lots of things to be able to attract high-quality candidates here too, but folks have options, and there's lots of them in this area. So anyway,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, 8D, we have FY20 financial status report. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr.
Just
Rexton.
as one quick follow-up comment that I tied this idea with also the discussion that we had previously about student retention when we were talking about, especially from our 8th grade into the high school, that there may not be as much to be learned as we hope there could be, because there will always be reasons, unique circumstances. And then there's always going to be turnover and, people who are looking for something different in both situations. But it's, I think, incumbent on us to look for what there might be to be learned about why people are making the choices that they're making to leave our district, either as students or faculty. So I think those are kind of a pair.
Yeah, of course.
I agree, as you know, with Mr. Ragsdale, but I think, too, with regards to the retention piece, which I think is the vital piece, is that I think ensuring, too, that our staff culture is a culture which one would not want to, granted, there's all different circumstances, but it's a staff culture and a staff district where people don't want to leave, is, I think, and I think that might be another perspective that this data can assist in ensuring. Thank you.
Thank you. 8D, financial status report. Mr. Azurio, is that you?
Yes, thank you. This report is as of December 20th. Our FY20 budget is $41,939,603. We've spent and encumbered through December 20th, $40,332,487. Right now, we have a positive balance of $1,607,116. Some of that, obviously, will, most of it will get used up as we continue through the year, but I'm very confident we're in good shape right now with our financial picture. There's a few things that, a little bit of cleanup we need to do. There's a couple motions that I request that the school committee approve to move some money around. And then there's a few other, some things charged to incorrect account that we have to clean up as well that we'll be doing over the course of the next, few weeks and so forth, so.
So there are some motions here. Are there any questions before we move into that? So I will read the first one. Allow the Assistant Superintendent of Administration and Finance to move budgeted funds from the salary adjustment line to the proper line items to account for lane changes and contractual salary increases.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Fennelly? All in favor? That's unanimous. And then the second motion reads, allow the Assistant Superintendent of Administration and Finance to distribute the circuit breaker offset to the appropriate special education tuition lines. Thank you. Mr. Samaha, seconded by Mrs. Burns. All in favor? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. 8E, SEAM Collaborative Annual Report and Audit. Dr. Brand.
Yes, thank you. In your packet, there is an extensive report that comes from Dr. Lawson of the SEAM Collaborative. This is the annual report for the 2018-19 school year. Along with that is also the audit of the financials. The SEAM Collaborative, as I've had the good fortune to learn over the last year and a half, really is a great asset to our district as that of the other districts who are partnership, whether it be the job-alike groups and certainly the access to programming for some of our students. It's a great partnership. I think this is truly an example of the benefit that collaboratives can bring school districts. And so this is for information purposes only. There's no action that's specifically requested of you at all this evening, but informational also. And this, of course, will be disseminated to the other school committees of the districts that are a member of the collaborative.
Questions?
I just had a quick question. I was glancing through it, and I'm impressed because they're only building upon what their offerings, which is great to see. And there was a reference to an inclusion coaching service. Is that, I'm trying to look for it in the report, exactly where it lands. And I didn't know if, I know that, it's a new service under the description of district-based services. Is that something that, you may not be able to answer, and I'm sorry, but I didn't know if it was something that we could utilize if we don't already utilize it?
I'll ask, Paul, we do, but Paul, do you want to add more to
Yeah,
that?
back a couple of years ago, member districts of the SEAM Collaborative applied for a radar grant that kind of went through SEAM.
Okay.
And part of that was, or the grant was for an inclusion coach, if you will, that would be employed by SEAM. But each of the participating districts, we do pay, and in our budget, there's an amount of money, so we do utilize that coach
Okay.
in Wilmington, as the
Wonderful.
other districts do as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Questions? Mr. Bagsdale?
Just like to comment that I think that for people who are kind of interested in why we belong to the collaborative and what they offer, that the first 15 or so pages of this report gives a really nice just summary of the programming that they offer and the resources that they can provide. And, you sort of think that it comes up every year, and a lot of people probably don't really know what it is or what they do. And, but if anyone is interested in just getting kind of that summary of what benefit we receive from being a member of it, the first 10, 15 pages give a nice overview of what kind of services they provide. So I commend that to anyone interested in learning why we're a member.
I'll just sort of piggyback off that as well, too. If you look further on in the report, it compares the average comparable tuition of if we didn't belong to SEAM, what that would cost. And SEAM saves us money in every one of their programs. So that's another reason if people are curious why we belong. It's another huge, huge piece.
Thank you. All right. 8F, electronic packets for school committee materials. Dr. Brand?
All right, I will start off. There has been some discussion in the past about shifting or transitioning to electronic format for the dissemination of the materials in the packet. These packets are extensive, and as I think, well, certainly members of the committee know, and hopefully members of the community know, each and every one of the packets is posted electronically and available on our website, as well as not just the current year and current packets to date, but previous years. With conversation with, informally with some of the members, it's certainly come to the attention, and Mr. Ragsdale, I know, spoke about this from his experience specifically at the joint conference not that long ago, that other school committees have moved in this direction, certainly. And the direction that we've been talking about and planning and discussing with Mr. Lord, Ms. Bryson, Mr. Ragsdale, Ms. Dixie, what would that look like for us? And it seems like leveraging or utilizing Google Docs as the platform would certainly help in this regard. And it's something that there seems to be some interest in trying, a trial basis to see what that would actually look like, and so on. So I sort of start with that and put that out there, and would love to have any thoughts or suggestions or questions that we can try and work through. And again, the thought here is a trial, not to shift permanently. It would not change access from the public standpoint in terms of the ability for a citizen to access the material. That would not change at all. The format would not change at all. It would be put into, though, an electronic form. So.
And then someone asked today, would we be able to make comments within our own packet? And so you would have the ability to do that. So you'd have your own folder where you could make comments and then go back to that during the meeting, just as you would with paper. Any other, Mr. Ragsdale, you want to add anything else that we haven't talked about already?
I mean, I'll just mention that a couple of the benefits, you know, as you said, that we can still make, all of us would have our own individual Google Drives in which we'd have our own documents. So you make your own make your own comments, your own notes on the documents, anything that you want to talk about during the meeting would be available. So as we would just kind of like work through items on the agenda, they'd all be hyperlinked. So you just click on them in the sort of an electronic, the agenda, and then we get the individual items. One nice benefit would be is that things could be posted as they are ready. So currently with the paper packet, nothing can come to us. They can't deliver it until pretty much everything is there. With electronic documents, as they become ready and available, they can be posted to the drive, which would give us more time to look and consider and read and prepare for the meetings. Also, it would make it much easier if anything needs to be corrected or if any document needs to be replaced, rather than just coming in to pick up a completely new copy at the meeting. That would make it very easy to swap things out or make changes if they were necessary.
And there often are, as you know, late changes or corrections, and so it does become, I think, hard to stay on track with what papers I have and where we are. So I think it'd be helpful for us in that way. And also what we do with our packets after. So I think there's some people who take tons of notes and then take pictures and put it into file folders on their computer to save it. Other people I know save the hard copies. But if those of us trying to move maybe more electronic, this is a way that it's already being done for us, so we don't have to then worry about, well, I already took all these notes, how am I then going to save it into a file folder on my computer? So, or have notes in one place and then in another. Mrs. Burns?
This is not anything new for the school board. We previously tried doing it back in 2013. I know Peggy Kane is looking down on me. I am one who I do prefer going forth with the paper. I think it's great, and I highly support doing the pilot. But I would, and I don't mind doing the pilot, but I know how and forgive me, I might be, you can't teach an old dog new tricks per se. I'm not as tech savvy, and because my time is limited with regards to the research and the preparation for these meetings, and I understand everything, and I think it is right with regards to the timeliness of things, but I would like at least this opportunity for an opt-out.
Which I think, which I think if
Okay.
people are uncomfortable with it,
All
we're
right, I
not
just
going to
know
say,
my
it's
workflow,
either
and
this or that.
Not to be closed-minded, because
Sure.
I'm willing to try it, but my biggest thing is ensuring that, and sometimes I prepare in a variety of different locations depending upon my time constraints, and, but I just wanted to, make sure, that would still be an option, because I know I have a lot more tech-savvy colleagues on the board, which would probably, segue well for their style, but, I just wanted to just.
I think we're
Figure
just
out.
hoping that we give it a try and see, and I think some of us probably are more comfortable working electronically than we are working in paper, and others are more comfortable. So whatever you decide, it should be what works best for you and how you work through the packet each week. I think that's what matters most, is how do you do your best work? And so we'll honor, I think that there's no reason not to honor that, and then to make arrangements for people to have their copies ready or brought to them, or however we decide to move forward with that. But I would hope we could all try it and see, and, see how it all pans out and what we think.
I'll just say, I'm sorry I didn't mention, the intention is not to change, by the way, the timeline of the release of the packet. We're still shooting for, sometimes I know it's been Friday, but most
Shooting for
often
Thursday.
Thursday. But certainly, I can speak for Tristan, and who does the bulk of the work, as you know, and I, that it would be helpful, too, to be able to, we can still press send at the end of the day Thursday. But sometimes there are things coming in last minute, and sometimes it's a struggle to be able to hit the courier to get it all sequenced and coordinated out the door. So, but there's no intention of not still posting, generally speaking, the Thursday before the meeting. So
And I don't mind if there are last-minute changes. For me, I don't know what the view for other colleagues are. I know that there have been times where Tristan has sent an updated piece via email, which that too is helpful. At least I can print it out, and so, that's another alternative, but, just to be respectful of time and the intricacies of getting information out timely.
Any questions or concerns? Or
I
thoughts?
would just add one more thought, which you got started to get about what you do with like all the old paper, not just because it piles up, but one thing that I think that having electronic workflow will really enhance is the ability to actually like find old material and easily access it. Because there are times when I know that I've kind of have to go back to my files to find something. Oh, what meeting did we talk about that? And then I have to go find the agendas and eventually dig it out. And I think it would be far, far easier to do that with just everything sitting in hyperlinked in a Google Drive to go back and find material that we've had before, as well as not having it cluttering up my file cabinets.
Yes, I completely agree. I think I do run into that, and the more years you do it, the harder it is to then track down, when was this, how did we do this? So you have to go to the website to figure out where it happened, and then I have to go try and find it. Like, it's just, so when I think it's something important I'm gonna have to come back to, I already type it here just so I can search it and be like, okay, it was that date. So I think it'll help in that way as well. Plus, some of the big things I find to be hard is when we have a presentation, but we don't see the PowerPoint until sort of either very cool, we never see the PowerPoint, so this will actually, even if I'm just getting ready for the meeting and I want to say, oh, I really wanted to look at that PowerPoint real quickly, now we'll be able to do that, whereas it wouldn't have made sense necessarily to have that printed out for us when we come in, sort of thing. So I feel like it gives us a little bit more insight to some of the presentations, so we're not sitting here coming up with our questions and thoughts in the moment. Mrs. Burns?
So, two couple questions as we discuss this. For the pilot, is there someone, how do we, do we vote on this, does that require a vote from the board to?
I don't think it requires a vote to pilot it.
Okay, so second, how do we onboard? And for those who are technologically challenged, is there support with regards to navigating? I must have 3 or 4 Google Classroom passwords, but I can never get back in because I never remember where they are or what they are, and I'm not as familiar. So is there a kind of a way we could do like a one-on-one with somebody who might be able to assist? Because I would like to give it a try. because I might be, surprised that I might be more, yeah, look at the face.
It might be better.
But I'd like to give, I'd like to at least make a good college try to see if this in fact may work out better, for me in what I do, so.
So it's a great point, and I absolutely think that I can work with Ken and Tristan to figure out a couple of options perhaps. I'm sure that could include a simplistic cheat sheet with some graphical, overviews of where and how to access things. I don't think that would be very hard to do. We can also probably think of a drop-in a couple of time periods perhaps. Unless there's a differing thought, the thought is to move forward with this and start the trial for the January 22nd meeting. And so certainly it gives us a little bit of time to get prepared for that.
Will we be getting the budget book like we normally do with a binder?
So not for that meeting. That
Okay.
meeting is presentation only.
Okay.
The next
Yeah, the
hearing,
budget
for the
hearing,
hearing
the
you'll
whole
get.
book. So you have the binder, if I may.
Yeah.
You have the binder that we gave last time. This time, there'll be more of a presentation. There will be some slides that this is where we were, here's the changes we made, here's the recommended superintendent's budget, so it'll spell that out. But the full binder, we will then prepare for the budget hearing for the February 12th, I think, school
Gotcha.
committee meeting.
Okay. And my last question is the Chromebooks. Are these Chromebooks something that we will be purchasing? Because I don't want any Chromebooks or anything being removed from any of the schools to accommodate our,
Thank you for asking. Yeah, so there have been a few members who expressed an interest in being able to utilize a device, which is entirely appropriate. I know that school districts who do go in this path or in this direction do provide those, and so Mr. Lord has assured me that we do have, I won't say a surplus, but right now unassigned Chromebooks that we could deploy. We're only talking about a couple here.
right?
And that they would be, of course, remain district property, but that those school committee members who have expressed an interest would be able to utilize those for the purposes of school committee work, which I think is only appropriate. The flow is constant, and so, but it's not taking machines that otherwise are deployed right now.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay.
And then just something else I was thinking about today was a lot of us who use Google Docs or Google Drive, things get dropped in, but we don't always know. And so making sure that if something is coming in, that we're still reminded, I said today earlier during our agenda meeting, that we all work full-time and have busy lives. And so when the packet arrives at our doorstep, it's also a signal to say, oh, the packet is here and I need to start doing that work. So I think that we'll make sure, we'll find ways to definitely say, hey, things are up. Please begin reviewing, as opposed to just assuming you'll just go in and start looking for things. And then if something changes or something new is uploaded, you'd get another email or notification that this is now new, this is different, so you might want to take a look at this. So we're not, sometimes I'm in groups where I'm actually expected to just go in and kind of consistently review it, but this would not be something like that.
There's no alert kind of like system tied into that could be tied into the email saying, you've got mail, you know what I mean? Like I know that in the medical field, we have a secured patient portal that patients communicate with the office. And when we communicate through that, they do get a ding in their regular email that account's tied to, saying there's a message waiting for you. So I don't know I'm not familiar with the Google platform, so I don't know if that's something that could be tied into
I don't know. I do know if I'm in Drive, you can see things on the sidebar that says this has been edited, altered, changed. If I'm not in Drive, I don't get notifications that something has been added or changed, unless someone then resends me sort of a link, or they share it with me again. So if someone shares it, I automatically get an email. This has been shared with you. But someone has to do something to that
in order to
in
get
order for me to get it. But there could be other ways. Mr. Ragsdale, you might is a little bit more Google savvy, or quite a bit, I should say, quite a bit more, quite a bit more Google savvy.
I feel like being put on the spot.
Not sure if I'd say that.
Is there another way for notifications?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so we'll look into it, but either way, my point is, I do think when the packet arrives, it does signify we're preparing for the next meeting. We understand that everyone is a volunteer and has very busy lives, so we're not gonna expect you to start going in and surfing through and making sure that we'll make it as easy and clear as possible to prepare for that next meeting.
And how long would you like to pilot this, would be my next question. Sorry, I'm just curious, it's preliminary.
We hadn't talked about that. What are your thoughts?
I'll say, we should at least, pilot it for at least a meeting or two, and then maybe come back and and talk about it again, like we're talking about it now, and see what are the benefits and the.
It looks like you
drawbacks.
can get notifications for newly shared items.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
I would say maybe two, because one could be a little messy, and we're still trying to figure it out, but maybe we'll try for two and then reconvene, but of course, reach out immediately if, to Tristan or to Dr. Brand if you're struggling or it's not working.
We just need to share with us with Steve, too, to let him know what's transpiring.
Yeah,
He
he was
hasn't
at the agenda meeting today, so we
Perfect.
did talk a little bit about it.
Perfect.
But do not, try not to go in and print everything out and bring your own packet, because that's not the point. I'm
All right.
afraid, and what I'm afraid is gonna happen is everyone's gonna come in with their own, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not really the point. So try and restrict and just try and embrace it and see what you think, so we really get a feel for it. Did you have something you wanted to add?
One comment?
Yeah.
I don't know if they can hear me, but we did talk about if there are items that we feel that should be printed and brought to the meeting, we will certainly do that. So there are things that, or requests that come in if somebody needs a copy of something or wants a copy, then we will do that. So it's not, we're not gonna put it up there and say, nope, I'm not gonna make a copy. We'll figure that out as we look at the materials that are presented for that meeting.
Thanks, everybody. All right. 8G, Superintendent Evaluation Discussion.
In your packet is two items related to this, the evaluation. First off, an update as of January the 8th. We are moving towards the established date that you agreed to at the next meeting for me to provide you with a mid-year update, if you will, around respective activity around my goals that you approved. And so this is just really to serve as a you've got mail kind of reminder that that's coming. We're moving through, obviously, the evaluation cycle. As you'll note in here, I would like to propose to you, though, to have a couple of amendments made. And again, I'm not necessarily, you certainly could vote if you so wish, but just with your will to consider an amendment with, it's become clear to me that with some other activity that is going to be soon coming online, literally, that I think I need to modify some of the original goals that I had proposed to you. And so you'll note in there the request to place on hold, at least for now, the commitment to high standards of mission and core values as that related to goals that I proposed to you a number of months back. That's for both of those things, in some respects, some of the work that was intended and captured around that does spill over into some of the other goals, but to be true to what this process is, and that is for me to set out specific action steps or actionable items, and then to be able to provide you with proof or evidence specifically, there's going to be a limitation around, quite frankly, some of the efforts in those. So I'm not asking to remove those. I'm just asking for the time being, at least for this year, I guess, to set those aside. The superintendent evaluation timeline, as mentioned, is the final piece in this memo, January 22nd. That's the next meeting. A mid-year goal update, so nothing except really presentation for you in terms of some of the different efforts on some of the goals to date. April 29th, that's, I know, a few months out, but that is when we committed to me bringing to you the end of cycle goal report and the official kickoff of the FY20 superintendent evaluation process. And so the final piece, a recommendation that whether it be this evening or at your next meeting, if there's anything that you wish to further discuss or feel needs to be decided upon in terms of that evaluation process. I know it's only early January, but I think we can all agree that time is going to tick pretty quickly here. So with that, I'm happy to take any comments or questions or feedback you might have.
Questions, comments, Mr. Baxter?
I think that this makes complete sense, given the additional work in particular with the statements of interest for the MSBA application, that's an enormous project and something has to give. There's only so many hours in the day. And so I think that this makes perfect sense. I would support revising the goals.
I agree with, with Mr. Ragsdale. I think even if you're looking at sort of, not doing the commitment to high standards and the mission and core values, I mean, like, this MSBA stuff is totally related to those two things, so I think it all fits together, so I support it as well.
Mrs. Burns?
I concur with my colleagues, but I also think, as you stated and touched upon, that although it's not a part of your goals in this revision, the work in these areas will still continue to some capacity. So I think that's also important to know, that it's not going to clarify that it's not going to stop until we get this part. It's going to continue, but not at the same, the end result for this year is not going to be the same, but they will continue to move forward.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. Oh, Mr. Ragsdale?
Just have one more thing, which I've started doing for myself. One of the things I found last year, doing the evaluation process for the first time, is that I had wished I had taken kind of better notes since the start of the school year about some of these elements and the progress along the way and different pieces of evidence, because my head wasn't there until it was getting close to start actually working on the evaluation. And so I'm trying to do a better job this year of just kind of making notes towards the evaluation process later on in the year. So, while things are still fresh in my mind, and not having to try and go back and just, reread all the old packets and try and get back in that same headspace that I was before then. And so I commend that to everyone, that you'll be thankful if you're making some notes now as things occur to you, and not just waiting until April and May and June.
If I may,
So, and I have a comment about that too. But do you?
Sure, I was just
Yeah.
going to say, thank you so much for raising that, and I will also admit that I'm trying to do a much better job than I did last year, and dare I say it, have a Google Doc created already that I'm actually have been populating with different artifacts, if you will, that, of course, I'll share with you and far before the end date. So it's still being populated along the way, but to the degree that might be helpful. Quite frankly, it's copies of many things that you will have seen over the course of the year, but to categorize them in the different goals is what I have already started, so.
And in the different, we think we did it by standard. Did you have it by standard last year?
I have right now, what I'm gathering is specifics for the goals, but
Okay.
I can think about
Okay.
that as well, too. Yeah.
And so I think that I just was thinking about new members and members who would like to just sort of look through this together and talk about how to start this work. We'll have a couple of, just office hours at the Roman House where we can walk through the rubric and just say, this is what it looks like, and here's what you might want to start doing to start preparing for that. And we can now upload this to the upcoming Google Drive or Google Doc. So you can see you can go online and get it too, but we'll have it there for you. So that will be sort of your copy. And then the idea is that we all do our own, and then the evaluation committee comes together and then merges everyone's. So I agree, it's not good to wait until the last minute, but it is hard to fill in some of it until you've sort of gone through the cycle, but to take notes as you're going along. And the folders that Dr. Brand is helpful. You'll see as you get to it, you're like, oh, let me go see what the evidence is for that.
I think just the comp is composing it in a way, I think, is where it's not the content or the evidence, it's composing it in a way of which meets, showing that it meets the goal. And I'm one of those wordsmiths, so it does take me, I think, a couple of weeks just to be able to throw it up and then edit it and add and delete. And that's where that's where it is. And I think, and having those hours, as long as we're not on a quorum,
Of course.
I think are perfect, not only for the new members, which it can look daunting, but also for some of us who have gone through it several times and still like, okay.
Well, we can probably share, obviously you would see, you can look at the old one, you can look at the other one too, but that's helpful. There is it's a new form now, it looks a little bit different, but
Is there there's a subcommittee around this too, yes?
There is.
Okay, all right.
I'm on it, you're on it. And Jay, okay. So that's just a couple of notes on that, and I just will add, when you're doing this, so I think when I first started it, I was like, ooh, we know he's doing it, but do I have the evidence? We don't know everything that happened. I mean, we think we do, but there's pieces where I'm like, oh, wait, I don't have enough information about this. And so it's helpful, I think, to go into the second half of this year saying, where would I see evidence of, say, continuous learning or managing conflict? Like, so we don't necessarily see the ins and so if you have questions and as those come back at the mid-year and toward the end, it's helpful to sort of indicate where might I need more information.
Judge, you'll be presenting that too, for us to work off of as well, correct?
Yes,
I'm not sure,
Well,
what your
certainly
thoughts were.
what I did last year was a presentation of sort of a final report on the goals, performance goals specifically. If I remember correctly, I don't think
You didn't.
anything
It was the
broader
goals.
than that. And so certainly, but that's something that could be done, and I could think about if that's desired.
I think it would be helpful to have that document of action or where you are in those goals. I think that would help compose those elements that I think it would help us to have it. I'm sure you don't have to go into
Yeah.
length, but to reference the evidence behind the goals and
Sure.
if that's not.
Last year, Dorothy Presser came and presented to us on the evaluation process, and I wonder if that would make sense to do again this year, especially since we're using the new
Sure.
evaluation framework.
I'll reach out to her, see if she can come to one of our meetings before the spring. Thank you. So more to come on that. Thank you for that. And no vote, but it looks like we're all in agreement.
Right, thank you.
Okay. All right. 8H, we have the first reading of revised policies CB through CHCA. And I will come back to BEC and BGE. So I have only seen questions come to me on CCB and CHA. Does anyone, otherwise I'll just sort of quickly go through and have you take a look as we scan these. So CB, you'll see the changes there. CBA, CBC. We just added the review date. CBCB. Review of employee contracts. We cleaned up the language there. Stop me if you want to go and talk through it, but if not, I'll keep going. CBD, we have superintendent's contract. CBI, evaluation. CCB, which is one I have. Well, is there a comment on this? On line and staff relations, there were just two word changes from system to district. Was there another comment?
Nothing
Okay.
public, yeah. Thank you.
CE, administrative councils, cabinets, and committees.
Oh, I just have actually a
Sure.
quick comment on CE, which with the change to they in the second line,
Yep.
that deems needs to become deem.
As they deem necessary. Okay. So CE, do you have that, Mrs. Dixie? Thank you. CHA, development of procedures.
I did.
Yes, that's one, thank you.
Yes. So I believe that I know with part of the alterations is the removal of students from this policy, which I feel should strongly remain within this policy, because I think besides supporting the district school beliefs with offering skill building around our student civic leadership and advocacy and participation in their governance, we've seen this past year students come forth with staff support with the creation of a vaping policy they brought forth. I think their role in their governance and what transpires is another stakeholder. And I think the key word in this policy is, gives the superintendent, the key word is may. So the superintendent has the discretion as to, depending upon policy and procedures, as to who makes up those bodies to drive that work.
Bless you.
Not I don't think every committee or every, I think is, I don't think it's appropriate for students in some realm, but it gives the superintendent that discretion. And if I'm correct, I know that we've used students on search committees to get their perspective and their point of view, and they sit on the Wellness Advisory Committee as well. And so I think, it's their perspective helps us drive those procedures and policy that govern. So I really kind of feel that students should be a part of that makeup and continue to give the superintendent that flexibility to, when situations present themselves, to appoint student representatives to certain areas that drive that. So that's how I've interpreted this policy, and if I've misinterpreted in some way, please let me know, because I wasn't sure what the
Right.
thought process behind it was.
No, I think we were just following MASC. I don't have a problem keeping students. Does anyone, are they reading it differently than I?
No, I think Mrs. Burns is right.
Yeah, I agree.
I think
Cool.
that,
All right, great.
we should keep students.
So we'll keep students, so we'll remove that strikeout when we bring it back for a second reading. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So that, we'll keep moving. CHB. We have, yeah,
Do we need to bring this back again, or can we just agree to vote with that amendment, with that change?
oh, I think we can agree to, that's, yeah, I meant, we'll see that in the second reading. So when we vote on them, I'm going to include that, if that's okay.
Great.
Thank you for the second reading. So we've removed that because it's the same as BGD. And then CHC, we've added the source and the review date. CHCA, we switched system to district, we did the pronoun, and then the school council shall review the handbook. Here it said annually, we changed it to each spring, which I believe is what we followed MASC's language. That seems fine, then we'll take those. Okay, so we will, a motion to approve CB through CHCA.
It's just the first reading.
This
We
is
don't-
the
Oh, we
first
don't have the
reading, so-
motion. Oh, my gosh, thank you. All right, but I do need, thank you. So we're gonna see those again, second read. Thank you very much. BEC and BGE. So I don't have, for some reason, I don't have the second reading policies. However, BGE, I know, and I thought we did talk about this, about adding online, that we would have the, do you know where I am?
No, are we a BEC or BGE?
We are at, oh, BEC. So these are the two I'm going back to,
Okay,
correct?
yep.
BEC and BGE. Okay, so do you, Mrs. Byrne,
BEC is the executive session.
BEC is executive session.
Right.
Do you want to walk us through that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, drawing from past experience, I do strongly feel that with regards to keeping the language as it pertains to legal counsel review at least once a year on those minutes that we are classified. It's been my experience that there are certain things that we were planning on releasing that under legal advisement were asked not to, and vice versa. And I think even with the best intent, I think liability-wise, it makes prudent sense with regards to it. And, sometimes it's not as daunting. I don't see it daunting, but I do see it as just a security blanket to make sure that we checked and dotted, crossed Ts and dotted our Is. That pertains to the second sentence on the second page. The other reference, which is on page 2, paragraphs 3 and 4, I think the term declassification may be a better descriptive as opposed to release, because as my experience, and as I said, I'm not sure if it was personal preference or best practices. There's always been two actions the board has taken with regards to executive session minutes, one of which has been a discussion as to whether or not to release them upon the chair and superintendent's recommendation. And then we also have to vote on them, whether they be classified or whether or not, there's an area that we do have to vote on regardless as if they're released or not released, and if I'm correct.
We have to vote to approve them.
Right, to approve them, but they can be approved classified or declassified. We can't do it in public, though. Do you know what I mean?
Right, but aren't those two separate things, that we vote to approve on the minutes in executive session, and then it's a separate vote for any approved minutes, whether they are
Declassified.
whether they're released
Exactly.
publicly.
So there's two actions. And I think the release and declassification, I mean, we use declassified in other areas of those two paragraphs. So the releasing and declassifying, although they're similar, they're not, I mean, they're either I think continuity is one aspect, but I don't know, I think, and maybe it's my personal preference that I'm kind of stuck on that declassifying them. There's two actions, I guess, in that policy, to
But I think
vote to
that-
declassify them, then to also approve them. So, you know what I mean? We can approve them in executive session, that's only one step. Some minutes have not yet been released, but to vote on to as to whether or not that they're ready to be declassified is another vote, and another discussion by the board as well. So I just, that's what in my thought, I don't know that's how I'm interpreting it. I just don't know what is best practice or personal preference from previous leadership. So I think that's where I'm stuck on. And,
All right, so let's go to that first edit. The school committee chair will review executive session minutes for possible declassification on at least a quarterly basis. And so Mrs. Burns is saying she'd like to remove if necessary and go right to consult with legal counsel
at least once a year,
once a year, at least once each year.
yes.
Is there thoughts, questions, concerns about adopting that language?
That makes sense.
That's fine.
I'm
I
with
agree.
that.
Okay.
I think regarding the second point, I think that to me, specifically on the point of declassification versus release, to me, this is the same thing, and that, because once they're declassified, it's just another way of saying we have to release them publicly, like, that's the only purpose for it. But I think it is missing in here the step that we do need to regularly approve these minutes, and we ran into a problem where we had like this big pile of executive session minutes last year that needed to be approved because we hadn't been regularly meeting to do that. And so I think that this policy is missing, if we're gonna have a broader policy on executive sessions, that needs to be included in here.
Agree.
That the session minutes need to be reviewed and approved on a regular basis as a separate thing of whether they're released.
Agree.
And
Agreed.
so
I think that would be a good remedy, actually.
Okay. I agree as well. All right, so I think the first one's pretty clear. The second one, you're good on that?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll bring this one back again as a second read and see if it works next time. Okay. Sorry, and then B, G, E, which is policy dissemination, which I thought we actually added this. So, Mrs. Burns, you're suggesting on the last paragraph
Exactly that.
will
I
be
know that-
available, right, for inspection at the superintendent's office and
Available.
also on the district website,
Exactly.
which I thought we actually did add. Didn't we add that? I could have sworn we added that. So we'll add that in time for the second read again.
Perfect.
Second read. Do I need to, can we vote on it, or do you want, no, we'll just wait. We'll wait till next time. So next time we'll come back, you'll see CB through CHCA and BEC and BGE with those changes. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, subcommittee reports.
On December 19th, after our previous school committee meeting, there was a CPAC meeting at which most of the discussion centered around the budget and the budget presentation from the previous school committee meeting, in particular the additional resources that Dr. Brand was proposing for the Student Support Services Office. So that was what that meeting revolved around. There is another CPAC meeting coming up on, I believe, January 14th. That is a Tuesday rather than a Thursday. I think it's actually on our district website, still as Thursday the 16th. my recollection is that we had to change it to Tuesday for people's scheduling purposes, and that Alice wasn't available, so. I say it's on Tuesday, the 14th, if anyone else is interested. I guess check the posted agenda when it goes up on the town hall, on the town's website to see what we really posted for.
Excellent.
And so that was the CPAC meeting, and then we also had a meeting of the school start time committee, which was that just yesterday? I think that was just like yesterday or the day before, no. That was just yesterday, and that was a meeting of the entire committee, in which, so for people who don't know, that the start time committee is split into 3 subcommittees that are kind of meeting separately on their own to advance a lot of the work. That there's a research subcommittee that is both researching the general issue in terms of kind of, research and academic literature on school start times and sleeping and so forth for secondary students, as well as researching what other school districts have done in Massachusetts and what some of those options are. There's an outreach subcommittee that is working on ways to ensure that we have a good two-way flow of information between the district and the community, that we are, keeping them apprised of our work and what, types of options we're considering, and that we are also gathering their feedback and making sure that we are taking those considerations into consideration. There you go. Considerations into consideration. Very important to do that. That we're getting their feedback and information to be considering and bearing in mind as we make those decisions. And then there is essentially kind of an implementation subcommittee that is looking at the actual options. What would this actually look like? How many buses, and what would the routes be, and how many tiers would they be? When would the starting times be, and so forth? That's working closely with Lisa Ferretra, our new transportation coordinator, and North Reading Transportation, and so forth. So those 3 separate subcommittees are kind of meeting and working on their own, but this was a meeting for the entire group to get together, for Dr. Band to, again, kind of sort of pull it all together in the big picture, to present a little bit more about the timeline and get reports, so that everyone could report back to the larger group about where they've been and what work they've done in the meantime, and then also still get some good subcommittee work done. So the majority of the meeting, it was about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and most of it was the subcommittees breaking up again to work on their individual aspects. But this work is going forward. It's a long process, and we will hopefully in the fall of 2021 have some new start times. But we will have to see where we end up.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And actually, just one other subcommittee-related question. I wanted to ask, has the transportation subcommittee that we formed when we also formed the Start Time School Committee, have they met?
We've met once.
Okay.
We've met once. And so that's kind of on my agenda. And knowing that there's, outside of the Start Time Committee, you have that component, that might be, depending upon where that component is with regards to the new transportation coordinator and what they're doing with regards to what the time, that we should kind of connect with them at some point.
Yes.
As we review policy, to see how that could impact policy.
Great. Any other subcommittee reports? I don't have a report, but I would like to schedule a meeting with the Family Communication Relations Committee. So just as a reminder, that's Joe, Jay, and me. So look for something, a doodle or something. I think that is it on subcommittees. Okay. Correspondence?
None this evening.
Future school committee dates, January 14th, we have the CPAC meeting. January 22nd, superintendent's recommended budget. The 23rd, we have Wilmington Substance Abuse Coalition presents Marijuana, Vape, and You. It's a community event. It is actually being held at St. Thomas Church. So initially, I think you may have seen something about Villanova Hall, so it has switched locations, still at the same time. And then our next, then our meeting would be what is the February 12th?
January
Yeah, I don't know. What is February 12th?
Tristan?
That's a budget,
It's
Is
at
that the
the-
budget hearing?
budget hearing. Budget hearing.
All right.
It's February 12th is the budget hearing.
Oh, Seems so far away. Okay, and then some upcoming district events. Tomorrow evening, we have the grade 6 band concert here in the auditorium. January 16th, grade 6 and 7 chorus and Wilmington's concert. And these are both rescheduled, right, from the snow days.
Yes.
January 20th, we have Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. January 21st through 24th, Wilmington High School mid-year exams. And if there's nothing further, then take a motion for adjournment. Mrs. Burns?
So moved.
Seconded by Mr. Fennelly. All in favor? That is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.